It's about time. Finally, I have some good news, some good research by one of the major custodians. This time it's Vanguard. And they wrote a report sharing how some want-to-be retirees are making the numbers work for them. You know, many of us are looking at our bank accounts and thinking, how am I ever going to be able to retire? But the reality is many of us have a fair amount of home equity in our home. And this is a strategy that Vanguard is sharing with us. Their report is called Home is Where Retirement Funding Is. And they open the report by saying, in this paper, we, Vanguard, show that generations of retirees may have tapped into housing wealth as an important source of funding via an unappreciated channel, which is relocating to a less expensive housing market. And they say about 60% of retirees that do choose to change the home, they're typically able to extract about $100,000 worth of home equity. And I don't know about you, but $100,000 makes a big, big difference in most Americans' lives as they're looking at, can I retire or can I not? So let's jump in. In this report, Vanguard shares that they highlight two types of relocators: those that are moving from a booming housing market and those that are moving to a low growth housing market. They call the people that are in the booming housing market, those are the lottery winners, the people that have a fair amount of home equity that has appreciated since they've bought in their house. And then there's the bargain hunters, people that are looking for lower cost places to live, whether that's in their state, whether that's out of their state, or in some cases, even out of the country. And they say about 80% of Americans age 60 and older are homeowners, which is a great thing, right? We've seen housing appreciation really do very, very well over the last 30 or 40 years. And they say that the housing wealth accounts for about half of most of our net worth. And this is the share of the population that moves annually. So relocating is not for everybody. You can see, young people are moving a lot more often. So 20 to 29-year-olds, over a fourth of 20 to 29-year-olds are moving each and every year. It doesn't mean the same person is moving, but over 25% of people 20 to 29 years old, over 25% are moving each year. And you can see that number goes down consistently, right? 30 to 39, it drops to a little over 17%. 40 to 49, it drops to 11. 50 to 59, it drops to 8.3. And then 60 to 69, it's 6.6%, drops again to 5.7. And then over 80, it starts to increase. And frankly, it's probably starting to increase because people are moving into assisted living. So you can see that, that data is going down each and every year, the percent of us that are moving. But according to the Vanguard report, we can really unleash and unlock a fair amount of capital that might allow some of us to retire sooner. Okay, the next chart I want to share with you, the next table I want to share with you is, where are people moving? Where are seniors moving? So migration among those 60 and older in 2019. So you can see the majority of people, not the majority, but about a third of the people are moving in the same county. So they're staying in the state and they're staying in the county. Maybe they went from a larger house to a smaller house. Maybe within the same county, within the same city, they're moving to a different neighborhood that maybe, doesn't have access to the top tier school system that they wanted to have when their kids were younger. Whatever it is, it's about a third of the people are moving within the county. And then for a little over 40% are changing counties but staying within the state. About 20% of us move out of state, and that's hard for people to move out of state, right? We've lived in our state for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. We have relationships, we have friends. And I don't want any of us to underestimate the challenge of moving out of state. My parents, when they first retired, test drove. So I grew up in Ohio. They lived their entire lives in northeastern Ohio. And they test drove going to Florida one winter. And you know what? They were super excited about going, right, to get out of the harsh winters in Cleveland, Ohio, in their case, and go down to Florida. They really thought they were going to love it. And fortunately, they did not buy a place in Florida. Fortunately, they did not sell their house in Cleveland, Ohio. They just rented for 1 year. And surprisingly to them, and to their friends that were doing the same thing, going down to Florida for the winter, my parents really disliked it. And they disliked it because all of their friends were still in Cleveland. They felt lonely down in Florida. So moving out of state, there's about a fourth of us that are going to move out of state, either staying in the United States, or almost 5%, 4% of us will actually move out of the United States. And that's a big, big move. I've been able to travel. And I can tell you, if you don't speak the language and if the culture is very different, that can be exciting, that can be invigorating for some people. I happen to like that. I'm fortunate I do speak Spanish fairly well, so in Spanish-speaking countries I can still communicate well. But I could see where that would be very challenging for some people. So only about 1 in 20 of us will move out of the United States. And I'd be curious to see, for people that move out of the country, how long they stay out of the country, because I think it can be difficult. It can be, you're probably never going to fully embed yourself in the new culture. Cultures are different. Cultures are fascinating for me. I think of our DNA as kind of our physical bodies, right? I'm 6 foot tall. I have blue eyes, but our culture is our software. The culture is what makes the hardware run. And culture can be very different from country to country. So about 4% of us are moving abroad. For those that find that invigorating and find that fun, it can really unleash a lot of opportunity and a lot of potential, because oftentimes moving overseas can be less expensive. So people that otherwise might not be able to retire for another 5 or 10 years, they might be able to retire sooner. So it can be a powerful thing, but it's not a decision to be made lightly. Okay, let's see what the dollar amounts are according to this Vanguard report. So this is the potential equity extracted or injected. You can see in the lower 10th percentile, people are actually losing money. These are people that might be moving from a lower cost place of living to a higher cost one like California. In the lower quartile, they're still losing money, but the median person unlocks a little over $15,000, not a terribly large amount of money, but the upper quartile, you can see, is over $100,000, which is what the Vanguard report talks about. The upper 10 percentile, so people in the 90th percentile, they're in the top 10%. They're unlocking almost $250,000, and the average is $24,000. You can see this. It varies for people that are moving to a cheaper market. You can see even the lower 10th percentile is unlocking almost $20,000. The lower quartile is unlocking $45,000. The median person's unlocking $100,000. This is where the report earlier said the median person's unlocking $100,000. That's for somebody that's moving from an expensive place to live to a less expensive place to live. And you can see people in the top quartile that are moving from a more costly place to a less costly place are unlocking almost $200,000. The top 10 percentile are unlocking over $250,000, with the average being a little over $140,000. But there's also people that are moving from a less costly market to a more costly market. And you can see the numbers there. You know, the people that are getting hurt the most are losing almost $250,000. The bottom quartile are losing a little under $170,000. The median person, it costs them $75,000 to upgrade. The top quartile is losing only $36,000. The top 10% are able to move to this more costly region and lose only $12,000, with the average person costing about $125,000 to move to a more costly region. If you want to see how your home state compares, that's what this chart shows here. The darker the blue, the more costly places to live and the greater wealth that had been created if you've been there 10, 20, 30 years. So you can see my home state of Utah is doing okay. You know, I can move to a fair number of places, and either, like if I wanted to move to Washington State or Oregon, it looks like that would be a lateral move for me. If I wanted to move to California or Hawaii, that would cost me a fair amount of money. So as a financial advisor for over 20 years, one of the things I want to share is oftentimes people think, you know, well, I can downsize, right? I live in a house now, I raised my family in that house, and I can downsize. I can share with you, yes, that strategy can work, but I don't count on that for your retirement. If it's a part of it, and as you're getting closer to retirement, great. But the reason I say don't count on that is I have seen people move from a 3,000 or a 4,000 square foot home into a 2,000 square foot home. But you know what? The amenities and the finishes on the houses, they tend to move down in size, but up in quality per square foot and up in cost per square foot. So it can be a really powerful strategy, but be realistic and think, you know, am I really going to extract value? Am I really going to be able to take out $100,000, $200,000 in home equity and move the needle for your retirement? And it's important to think through that and make a good decision. It's also important that we make a good decision about when we retire. And that's why I made this video up here. Why waiting to 65 to retire might be a big mistake. I'll see you in there. Bye-bye.